and have some prepared remarks because I think this is a little important and I want to make sure I say it correctly. Hello, my name is Sean Campbell and I'm the chair of the Portland Police Bureau's Training Advisory Council, an appointed community group with the mission of providing ongoing advice to the Chief of Police, the Bureau's Training Division, regarding officer training standards, practices, and outcomes. I would like to start by thanking the members of PSEP for allowing me to speak to all of you this evening. The Training Advisory Council, also known as the TAC, was founded in 2012 by the Portland City Council just prior to the signing of the Department of Justice settlement agreement, with the objective of providing written recommendations to the Portland Police Bureau regarding improved training strategies, programs, and initiatives with the overarching goal of improving the Bureau's delivery of services to the community. After the signing of the settlement agreement, the TAC was also given the task of reviewing data and analysis regarding the Bureau's use of force and reporting any patterns identified to the Chief of Police. The early efforts of the TAC centered on the creation of the new Bureau Training Center out by the Portland Airport and working to align the organization with the requirements of the settlement agreement. In 2016 and 2017, the TAC released its first set of recommendations focusing on training strategies, methods of information retention, and the reporting of the use of force. Following in 2018, the TAC began to shift our focus, working with the Bureau in its development of implicit bias and procedural justice training. Recently, the TAC has passed a recommendation regarding the inclusion of demographic data in the use of force reports and is currently developing recommendations regarding emotional intelligence training and a report detailing patterns in the use of force by the Bureau. The TAC is committed to creating actionable recommendations to ensure officers have the training needed to meet and exceed the needs of 21st century policing and the expectations of the community they serve. This includes ensuring equitable treatment of all members of our community, increasing transparency, improving interactions between officers and the public, and overcoming the challenges faced by the Bureau. Towards this, I have come to you this evening to discuss a recommendation created by the TAC at our last meeting earlier this month. The duties of the Portland Police Bureau put officers in situations every day that endanger their physical and mental health, safety, and at times their lives. Even when not at personal risk, officers are required to be witness to challenging and disturbing events. Over time, the stressful nature of their work can take a toll on their well-being, straining both their physical and mental health. However, internal culture and a lack of significant organizational support means that these issues often go ignored both by the individual and by the Bureau as a whole. The implications of not addressing these issues go far beyond the officers themselves. Numerous studies indicate that unmanaged officer physical and mental health issues lead to poor job performance, impaired decision-making ability, and higher agency costs. The monitoring and tending to of officers' health and wellness is increasingly being recognized nationwide as an important pillar of 21st century policing. Issues related to officer recruitment and retention, the use of force, public complaints against officers, the use of sick days, officer injuries, and issues of implicit bias can all be tied directly to the effects of unmanaged or mismanaged stress built up over time. On May 8th, the TAC strongly recommended that the Bureau explore and study existing comprehensive wellness programs in order to establish its own as soon as possible. Wellness programs in San Diego, Indianapolis, and Bend, Oregon are widely considered to be some of the best in the nation. A review of these programs has shown the following beneficial results. Improved officer health and well-being, including improved physical health, increased job satisfaction, lower rates of injury, fewer sick days taken, reduced fatigue and sleeplessness, greater officer retention, an increased feeling of being supported, and an improved sense of well-being. Better public interactions, including a decrease in the use of force incidents and fewer complaints by the public against officers. Helping officers correctly manage their stress makes them better able to put into practice trained techniques such as de-escalation and procedural justice, and is also expected to help reduce issues of implicit bias. Budget and organizational improvements, including less overtime to cover sick days, officer injuries, and in open positions. Greater employee retention, and an increase in the number of recruit and lateral applications. In addition, these direct benefits also lead to many indirect benefits in the long term, including a higher quality officer pool and improved public support and trust. It is believed by the TAC that few other initiatives provide the opportunities for improvement in so many areas as the implementation of an effective wellness program. Given our review, the TAC believes that in order to be effective, any wellness program must include initiatives focusing on the following. Officer physical health. Evaluations should be carried out to gain a better understanding of officer physical functionality, overall health, diet, and sleep patterns. Officer physical health should include paid time for directed workouts focused on the specific needs of the officers both as a group and individuals. Half of this available time should be for classes in yoga, modified to better fit the internal cultural needs of the Bureau. Aside from the physical benefits, yoga is also an excellent gateway for the introduction of mindfulness techniques and training. Additional training should focus on nutrition and tips for maintaining a good diet both while on duty and at home. Efforts should be made to make healthy food and drink options more readily available to officers prior to and during their shifts. The importance of officers taking personal time when possible should also be emphasized in relation to their physical and mental health. Officer mental health. The focus should be on improving officer mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and coping strategies. Support should come in the form of peer supporters directed by a permanent position who also acts as the main resource for the Employee Assistance Program, which should be holistically integrated into the wellness program. In order for support networks to succeed, officers need to feel that using any such service will not detrimentally affect their career. Mindfulness training should be a key part of both academy and in-service training, along with the normalization of recognizing and dealing with mental health issues related to police work. In the carrying out of their duties, officers should be given the opportunity, time, and space to put mindfulness techniques into practice when needed. Efforts should also be made to introduce short-guided mindfulness practice at the beginning and/or end of each shift. Spouse and family support. An officer's home life is just as important as their on-duty life. One important area is to provide training to help spouses and families better understand the stresses related to police work with a focus on the mental health aspects. Opportunities should also be created for training in financial management, which will be done in a fashion to allow the participation of spouses and partners. Additionally, work should be done to better create and organize family support groups. In order to be effective, a successful wellness program must be implemented throughout the officer's time of service from cadet training to retirement. It must factor into and be included in academy training, in-service training, time on duty, pre-shift briefings, and time on duty. Sorry, got a little out of order there. As well, participation in the wellness program must be an important factor in the choosing of officers to fill leadership positions and training positions. The above is only a basic outline of the hopes TAC has for the establishment of a wellness program within the Portland Police Bureau. The TAC looks forward to working further with the Bureau as the process of creating an effective wellness program moves forward. While the creation of a wellness program faces many hurdles and challenges, such as leadership support, officer buy-in, community buy-in, and budgetary concerns, it is strongly felt that none of these are insurmountable. And we know from the other cities that they are not insurmountable. We are here today because we wish to see a better police force and a better tomorrow for our community. While there are many challenges facing us, it is the belief of the TAC that incorporating a well-thought-out wellness plan for our officers is a major piece of the puzzle of creating the 21st century police force that our community deserves. Members of the Bureau are already working to build an effective and comprehensive wellness program, as I have described. However, it's still only in its beginning stages. The TAC has voiced its support for these efforts, and standing before you this evening, or in this case sitting, I hope that the PSEP can do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna have a few PSEP comments, and then we'll move to public comment after that.
Thanks very much, Sean. Thank you for your work, for your volunteer work, and for the product that you created. I think it's a report worth reading by everybody on this committee. And even though,
Can we have, if you're gonna record, can we just come stand just to the side a little bit? I find it a little distracting. We're right in front of everybody. I appreciate how these folks were just like on the sides. You can still do that, but we can still hear and see, and the audience can interact. Thank you. Go ahead.
so we don't have a formal recommendation drafted for PSEP to support this effort, but I think that's fine. It gives everybody a month to take a look, and to the extent that anybody wants to raise this at the settlement committee or the policy and settlement committee next month, happy to hear it then. But again, thanks for your work on this.
Other thoughts, comments?
Yeah. Go ahead. No. Are you kidding? You go. Are you kidding? You know who you are.
Overall, there's a certain level of disappointment I have that those kinds of necessary interventions with people who are in the line of in stressful conditions are not in place in a formal way. Was disappointing to hear. I'm not shocked or surprised, but it was disappointing to hear that. And so I would certainly like to hear more about how you develop that in a way that actually produces the outcomes that you would want. My only concern, and it comes from probably so many years of doing racial equity work, is to suggest that implicit bias is a byproduct of officer stress as opposed to societal racism, and identifying and marginalizing that gives me a certain level of dis-ease, because stress and conditions of working in difficult situations has not been identified or found scientifically to be what produces implicit and explicit bias. And so that's the only caveat that I have with that. I appreciate the kind of situations. And then I look at communities that are impacted by those stressed officers, and I wonder about the same wellness programs and support for those who've been impacted on the other side. So we need to do something, because there is historical and ongoing trauma on both sides. So I appreciate your committee beginning to explore what could be possible to give officers and to encourage and maybe even insist that they go through these various kind of practices. And on the other side is those who are victimized by it. I'd like to think about how we can build that healthier, stronger, more collaborative and engaged community. So thank you for your work.
Just to clarify, I do not think that officer stresses create implicit bias, but I certainly believe that in stressful situations or situations where people have not learned to handle such things over time, it can make implicit biases that are already there worse and more likely to come out.
Sean, thank you for your for coming and sharing with us today. I want to just ask a couple, not ask, I really just want to speak a couple of things. I appreciate that that there's concern for the officers' well-being, and I do think, and I'm sure research would show that when the officers are well or being cared for, they serve better. My concern with what you just shared was, let me say it this way. I'm less stressed about my job when I'm trained to do my job well, right? And the job of the police is relative to people. And so what I didn't hear, what I'm not hearing is how are they trained better relative to their working with different communities, particularly different cultural communities. So you can do yoga 1,000,000 times a day, but if I come back to my job and I still don't know how to do my job, which is relative to different people, if I don't know how to do that job, no yoga is gonna undo the stress of that. And so what I'm not hearing, and I don't know if maybe my expectation was to hear it, what I'm not hearing is how are they being trained or how are they being cared for in ways that help them be more, help them do their job relative to people, relative to the people that they serve better. You have thoughts or comments about that?
With this recommendation, we do have other recommendations that work more within the sphere of that, such as the procedural justice training that the Bureau is introducing and the ways that we would like to see that shifted to help the communities, especially the ones that interact the most with the police. This was mostly a recommendation targeted specifically at wellness programs as opposed to broader training techniques. So I think it's mostly because as a group, we try to take things piece by piece to build, because we found if we try to take on too much at once, we don't get anywhere. So we see them as separate pieces that we work on and we continue pushing forward with.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think they're two separate issues. I think training is really important, and I also think that, you know, the emotional and physical well-being of the officers is also very important too, in that you can't forego one without the other, because even if you have a very well-trained individual, if they're not mentally there, physically there, then it's not going to be effective. And I just bring it back to, you know, I'm a teacher, the best teachers in the world. You know, it's a stressful situation working with you know, people all day long, and so we get taxed the same way. And I can only imagine it's got to be just the same for officers. So I'm in support of this. I don't know exactly like, you know, what things they need. I think, you know, evaluations of mental health is probably